at the basic drafting tools now. So these are lines, polylines, arcs and circles, splines, and fills. These are primarily used for drafting 2D details, but also show up on our exterior elevations. Occasionally there are parts of these that show up on our interior elevations as well. And anytime we need extra 2D embellishments on our documents. One of the primary uses of the polyline in particular, if we open up an elevation for example, is to sort of show the field of depth of a building. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn all layers on here, and we'll see the roof form right here. So oftentimes it's the case where we need to show sort of that field of depth where the wall that's sitting back a little bit further gets a lighter outline than the more prominent building mass. So there's a shorthand way to do that actually. So here, for example, if I wanted to show the outline of the roof as being a different line weight than what's below, you can select the content of an elevation, and here let's just go ahead and grab all of this stuff, save for maybe the grid lines. I'm going to grab the columns as well. And what I want to do here is copy and paste this stuff. Anytime you copy and paste elevation content or anything into an elevation, rather, you could paste from a copy from a floor plan, paste it into an elevation. It's going to paste it as lines and fills. The only views you can paste into are the floor plan views. So I'm going to move this up 50 feet. So I've got these copies of all of this stuff now moved up 50 feet. What I want to do here is grab all the fills and delete those. Now I get the line work that would be going around those fills. So you could take this line work, and let's go ahead and grab all that line work and go to Edit, Reshape, and Unify. And all of that line work now, wherever it can be, is going to be unified into a single polyline. That can then be used to draft out, for example, this dark blue pen. Let's view this with the drafting pen set, and you can see that dark blue pen, that might be a little bit darker than I want to see on the elevation, but you can use any of these pens that you need, and because I moved it up 50 feet, I can move it back down 50 feet to outline that building mass. So that's one thing that we do to essentially augment the 3D model to give it sort of a field of depth, or like meet sort of standard drafting conventions. If something needs to be a little bit lighter, we can bump that down and then move this to 50 feet as well. So that's a quick shorthand way to add line work to your building elevations. Additionally, I mentioned that we sometimes will use fills and line work to augment an interior elevation. So if I have an interior elevation through this space, for example, this is most common in spaces that are vaulted. So let's go ahead and take a look at this elevation. We'll just open that with the current view settings. So the elevation, again, let's turn on all layers. So we can see like this, if the ceiling were vaulted up to here, for example, obviously the wall would need to be taller and everything. But we wouldn't want to show the thickness of that roof element, or that ceiling plane element. So to mask that out, we have a worksheet in the latest iteration of the template. Let's go ahead and collapse this down and look at our worksheets here. I believe it's in the worksheets, and it's under interior elevations somewhere. A7 interior elevation template. So this gives, this is sort of the general rule for placing annotation, masking, dimensions, all of this stuff. So for here, I'm just going to grab everything, and I will copy that and go to the elevation again, and I'm going to paste that into here. And let's just move it off to the side, something like that. Interior elevations are typically done at 1/2 inch, so that'll clean that text up. I'm going to actually grab the annotations and just delete those, grab the dimensions and delete those. We have this hotspot. That hotspot is really where that annotation is supposed to line up to anyway. So then this can be dragged around the model to mask out that ceiling piece. Again, this stuff all gets stretched. It's just sort of a boilerplate template. So here I can pull this up to that ceiling plane, mask out that roof thickness, add additional nodes. This is an easy way to clean up the boundary of an interior elevation, so you can show those masked out. All of this stuff then gets moved up to here. And then the outer hotspots are actually on the drawing. When this view gets saved and placed to a layout, we can snap the drawing frame to these outer hotspots so that every single interior elevation on the sheet sort of has the same boundary frame. So that's the idea with the outer pieces of this. It's not that this needs to be done for every elevation, but sort of consistently, it's the best way and easiest way to get these elevations to show cleanly, especially when we have protrusions and trim, things like crown molding, box beams, sloping ceilings in particular, or adjustments in floor levels. So if you have like a couple of steps down in the floor level, we can use this feature to mask that stuff out. There are other ways to do it, but this is the most consistent and easy way to get those elevations to show cleanly. Additionally, with the annotation, documentation, drafting tools, the lines and arcs, polylines and splines, there is this option right here for uniform tool settings. I can uncheck that and then use my line tool to be dashed, switch to my spline tool, change that to be whatever break mark, and then go back to my arc tool, arcs and circles, and set that to be dashed wide. And maybe that gets an arrowhead on it. If I switch this back to uniform, now every other tool is going to match that setting. So typically that's left as a match, but there is the option to have those individually adjustable. The polyline tool in particular has an interesting feature where you can set the nodes, the corners of those polylines, to repeat the best fit for segments rather than the total length of the polyline. What that means is that you avoid having weird gaps at the corners. So if I switch it to this method, for example, you can see how there's just these little tiny nodes here at the corner. It's possible in some cases, depending on exactly where that line falls, that you could end up with a blank at the corner. You know, if I pull this just right, it'll sometimes show as having no corner at all. You can see that actually right here, that node is floating and there's nothing at the corner. The dashed line at the junction ensures that there's always going to be a line at each edge of that node. And these are primarily used for drafting details and things like that. There is a, in the detail viewpoints, there is a detail resources or detail graphic favorites. Some of the projects may show that as a worksheet on older files, but this has some default fills, line types, some of the objects. The object tool is great for drawing details, includes a lot of these sort of lumber, wood, trim, fastener, insulation. A lot of this is in the object tool. These are saved here to this worksheet rather than cluttering up the favorites palette, because there just is a lot of stuff in the object tool, and this gives you a quick graphic reference to some objects like the glass lines, the break marks, linked details, stuff like that is great to have here that you can just literally eyedrop and dump into place in your details.